Now in the next couple of tutorials, what we're going to look at are species of trees that you would associate with hot climates. Here we've got the olive tree, which I always associate with Mediterranean countries. We'll be looking at the palm tree, which to my mind always conjures up an image of white soft sand, some gentle waves lapping against the beach, and sitting in the shade of this tree sipping a nice iced drink. We'll be looking at the eucalyptus tree, or the gum tree, which is an iconic tree for Australia, and we'll look at that in a little more detail in a few minutes. What we're going to be using over the next couple of tutorials are 4 brushes. We've got the 1/2 inch flat brush here, the number 10 round. I'm going to be bringing the number 6 round in again to do some of the smaller branches and whatnot, and of course we've got our little friend the rigger to do the very fine branches and the twigs. But I'm also going to introduce 2 other items. First of all, we're going to have a look at how to use masking fluid, and essentially it's a water-based rubber solution that you paint on the paper, and when it dries within a few minutes you can then paint over it and later rub off the rubber solution, and it leaves an image behind that you can then fill in. And the other thing we're going to look at is using sponges to create foliage texture. But we're going to start off with the olive tree, and because there are relatively few leaves on this specimen, you'll need to be able to draw a little bit more of the trunk because it's going to be in view. What I have right away is a sort of a bit where the tree splits fairly low down, and one branch goes one way like that, one main branch, and a couple of others go in the opposite direction like that. But do you notice that although I've used this reference photo as a guideline, I haven't followed it slavishly. It's just given me the confidence to show me roughly where the branches go on this tree, but I've just changed it as I thought fit. Right, now I've put together here a mix of raw sienna and lemon yellow with just a touch of ultramarine blue, and that gives us a nice, I suppose it's got to be an olive green, hasn't it? We've then put together a stronger touch of ultramarine blue and the raw sienna, and that's given us a darker sort of olive green to act for the shadow areas. Right, now what I'm doing is just stabbing the brush in and twisting it around, so you end up with that sort of splayed out effect full of the light yellow paint or yellow green paint like that. And then you can see I've already started just stabbing in. You can see if you get it wet it starts to run a little bit. I want it a bit drier than that. You can use a whole variety of brushes. You don't have to use a number 6 round brush. You could use a bristle brush to give a similar effect. Right, I'm going to use some raw sienna and some light red, but when I add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it, it's going to give us a nice grey colour like that. A lot of the time we don't need to paint the branches, we're only really just touching at it here and there. It's almost suggesting that the branches there underneath here is very much in shadow, and underneath there like that. You can see I'm just dabbing and stabbing. I'm trying to, every tiny little bit of white that's left on the tree I'm trying to take advantage of and use, as we saw in the mountains DVD, where you find little areas of white, paint a shadow around it. You see there you're creating that sort of almost like you've got the trunk and nature's twisted it round and wrung it out just there, but that's what they look like. Right, now let's have a look at the palm tree, and all I'm going to use for this tree is the number 6 brush. The colours we're going to use are ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and a little bit of lemon yellow and raw sienna for the leaves. But we're going to start off with this very watery wash of burnt umber, to which I've added a tiny little drop of raw sienna, and that's going to give us the base colour for the trunk. Now you can see here I'm not going to bother doing any drawing at all. There really isn't any need. I'm just running it in a slightly curved way down here. You can see like that. I'm just going to widen that out slightly like that, and we'll stop that there. Now I'm going to get a rather stronger mix of the burnt umber, and before this dries I'm just going to run this down the right hand edge of the palm tree. Now I'm just dragging a few little bits and pieces here and there to help it move across. I'm going to take some of the paint out, and then I'm just going up in the opposite direction, not too obviously. This will dye back quite a bit actually because it's only very damp at the moment, but you can see very simple technique. It's just giving an impression, particularly at the bottom level, of the crisscross effect that you get on a palm tree. Just a wash of almost neat ultramarine blue, and we're going to just run that down the outside edge of the palm tree. Wash that out, take most of the water out, and then just run that along the edge of the blue, and then by putting that blue edge down there into the damp paper and letting it run across, it gives us a very nice shadowed effect. All that I'm going to do here is to get a strongish mix of lemon yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of raw sienna to that to warm it up a little bit. Don't want it too fluorescent. And then slightly darker green mix. It's more of a back to our olive green colour there. The first thing I want to do is just paint a single line for each of these palm leaves, or I think they're called fronds. I'm sure somebody will tell me I've got that wrong, but never mind. You see, I'm just actually pivoting almost on my wrist like that, and then I'm splaying out the brush. I'm just taking some of the paint off at the same time, but I'm splaying out the brush because what I'm going to do is simply drag that down like that while that's still damp, and while I'm using the paint that's already on the brush. But you can see how easy that is to do. I've put a bit more paint on. I'm going to take it in this direction as well to give a sort of a bit of a blowy effect with the palm leaf, and then I'm going to come back into this with the dark green while it's still slightly damp. Take the excess off and just drag out a few darker areas just to give a little bit of tone and texture and light and shade to the leaf. Right, we'll just do one more leaf now. Come down here, I think, and you see how the dry brush effect starts bringing the leaf clusters down for you without even having to worry about painting them. That dry brush is a very nice effect indeed. Just make that a little bit darker because that's going to be underneath the main part of the tree, so it's going to be a little bit in shadow. But what I'm doing really is just agitating that, and then just bringing a little crisscross of some raw sienna, and then quite a strong mix of burnt umber. Now we've added the base here, which is some neat, fairly strong burnt umber. I've mopped a little bit out on that side to represent the highlights. I've blended it up slightly into the main trunk of the tree and into the ground as well. I've added some of the pale leaf colour into the ground, added a little bit of ultramarine blue for the shadow underneath the tree, and I've let that ultramarine blue run in onto the shadow side here. So there we have it. It's not difficult at all, is it? And all I've used is the number 6 brush, the palm tree.